Sai Ram. Welcome to today's class, students. Today we are going to start a new chapter. The name of the chapter is Nutrition in Animals. Let's have a look at the contents for today's class. Introduction to animal nutrition, introduction to digestion, different ways of taking food, and alimentary canal or digestive tract. What you have already learned. In the previous chapter, you had studied that plants prepare their own food by the process of photosynthesis. So plants are autotrophs. Then animals get their food from plants either directly or indirectly. So animals are heterotrophs. Then we also learned that all organisms require food. We studied why do all organisms require food? They require food to grow, then to get energy, and we also need food to repair. To repair what? To repair our damaged cells, tissues. Animal nutrition. So this is the name of a chapter. So what do we mean, or what does animal nutrition include? So whenever we use this term animal nutrition, we need to remember that animal nutrition includes nutrient requirement, mode of intake of food, and its utilization in the body. Firstly, it's written nutrient requirement. Different organisms have different nutrient requirement. The nutrient requirement of a grasshopper will be different from a nutrient requirement of a cheetah or a tiger. And also the nutrient requirement in different stages of life is different. For example, a human baby, it can fulfill all its nutrient requirement by having mother's milk. But we adults cannot sustain ourselves by just drinking milk. We need to take other food items also. So nutrient requirements differ in different organisms, and they also differ in different stages of life. Then the second thing included here is mode of intake of food. Now different organisms also have different mode of intake of food. Some organisms like honeybees, they will suck the nectar. So sucking is their mode of intake of food. Snakes, they swallow whole of their prey. So swallowing is their mode of intake of food. We humans, we chew the food and then swallow it. So chewing and swallowing is our mode of intake of food. So mode of intake of food also differ in different organisms. In the end, it is written the utilization of the food in the body. What it includes is once the food which has gone inside the body, how is that food digested? What are the various chemicals that will act on it? So that is what is included in it. So we need to remember animal nutrition includes nutrient requirement, mode of intake of food, and its utilization in the body. How is that food utilized in the end in the body? Now, try to recall the various components of food. We had studied this in the previous chapter also, and you have learned it in class 6 also. What are the various components of food? They are carbohydrates, proteins, fats, vitamins and minerals. Generally, items made up of wheat and rice are rich in carbohydrates. Dairy products, meats, cereals are rich in proteins. Oil contains fats, and green vegetables and other food items contain vitamins and minerals. Now, digestion. The components of food such as carbohydrates are complex substances. So all the components that we studied in the previous slide, like carbohydrates, proteins, fats, they are complex substances. Now the thing is this, these complex substances cannot be utilized as such. So they need to be broken down into simpler substances. So these complex substances cannot be used by our body as such. The carbohydrate, the protein, the vitamins, the fats present in our food, they cannot be used as such by our body. Why? Because they are complex substances and our body can only utilize simple substances. So the breakdown of complex substances of food into simpler substances is called digestion. For example, over here you can see a complex substance. If we say this is a complex substance, so this complex substance cannot be utilized as such. So it will be broken down into simpler substances. And this process of breakdown of complex substance into a simpler substance is called digestion. Now let's have a look at different ways of taking in food and what is the kind of food they take in and what are the different ways through which they take in. First of all, bees. As you can see in this picture, the honey bee is sucking nectar. So the kind of food is nectar and the mode of feeding here is sucking. Then the next organism is hummingbird. Again, as you can see in the picture, it is also sucking nectar. So its food is nectar and mode of feeding is also sucking. Now one thing I want to tell you over here is that, like in the case of bees, we can also use another term known as siphoning. S-I-P-H-O-N-I-N-G. Now what do you mean by siphoning? Siphoning is also, it's another word for sucking. Basically over here, when a tube is used for sucking, then we can use the word siphoning. Otherwise, you can also say their mode of feeding is sucking. Now infants of humans, what is their food? We all know that it is mother's milk. And how do they consume mother's milk? They firstly suck it and then they swallow it. Moving ahead, what is the food for snakes? Other animals, and the mode of feeding is they swallow whole of the other organism. So swallowing is the mode of feeding. Now in aquatic animals, they consume other tiny floating food particles. As you can see in this image over here of a whale, it has opened its mouth wide open. Now once the mouth is wide open, now water and other particles can start moving in. And once they start moving in, there are certain structures in the mouth which will filter this water. And the food particles will get stuck inside a structure in its mouth. It's called baleen. So in that baleen, these food particles will get stuck and that is how it feeds on it. So this kind of mode of feeding is called filter feeding because it is filtering the water and all the food particles get stuck in a structure in its mouth called baleen. Now the next animal is snail. As you can see in the picture over here, it is feeding on grass. So what is its mode of feeding? It's called scraping. What is it called? Scraping. What happens in scraping? They will remove the surface structure. So as you can see, the snail, as it is moving through this structure, it will remove the upper surface. So this type of mode of feeding in which the organism starts scratching off or starts scraping off the outer surface is called scraping. Now next is an eagle. Then the other organisms, fleas and mosquito. Now let's just talk about what is their kind of food. As you can see in this picture over here, eagle is, its food is, it is feeding on other small animal. While fleas and mosquito, they are feeding on blood. Now talking about mode of feeding. What is this eagle doing? It is capturing, and once it has captured the organism, it will swallow it. So capturing and swallowing is its mode of feeding. While in fleas and mosquito, the mode of feeding is sucking. Now next, what is the kind of food on which butterfly feeds on? As you can see in the picture, it is the nectar in the flower. And what is the housefly feeding on? On dead and decaying matter. In your house you can see on staled food they come and feed on. Then the ant is feeding on, normally ant feeds on other insects, other dead insects, and even other food particles. Now what is their mode of feeding? You can see the butterfly is sucking. Now again over here, I told you one term. What was that term? It was siphoning. So we can also use this word, siphoning. That is, when you use a tube-like structure for sucking, we can use this term known as siphoning. Then housefly, what is its mode of feeding? It's a really interesting one. It is sponging. Now what actually they do is, they do not have teeth, so they cannot eat. So what they do is, they will spit their saliva out and some other chemicals also. They spit that out, and once those chemicals are spit out, they'll dissolve that food item. And once that food item is dissolved, so then using a trunk-like structure, they will draw up that food inside in dissolved form. So they cannot take substance in solid form. They can only take it in liquid form. So to make it in a liquid form, they will spit out some chemicals, their saliva, which will dissolve that material. And once that material is dissolved, then they draw it up and then consume it. So this mode of feeding is known as sponging. Now ants, again they use scraping. So they will remove the outer surface of the food item or the whatever they want to consume. So it is called scraping. Now students, you can see a picture over here of a starfish. And do you know how does it feed? It again has a very interesting way of feeding. The second picture you can see, what is it doing? So basically they feed on organisms that are covered by shell, by calcium shells. So how will it eat the organism which is present inside that shell? It will go and it will, through its mouth, it will open up the shell, and once the shell is out, through its stomach, it will take out its mouth and eat the soft organism present inside it. So let's see how does it eat. Starfish feeds on animals covered by hard shells of calcium carbonate. Then they'll open the shell. The starfish pop out its stomach through its mouth to eat the soft animal inside the shell. As you can see in this image over here, it has popped out the stomach, and once the shell is popped out, it will eat the organism, which is the soft organism present inside the shell. Then the stomach goes back into the body and the food is slowly digested. So such an interesting way, such an interesting mode of feeding, right? Now let's have a look at the path of the food in our body. So once we have eaten our food, right? Now it goes in through the buccal cavity, right? Then after the buccal cavity comes the pharynx. It is the common passage for food and air. The food and air are both of them. It is a common passage for both of them. Then after going through the pharynx, it will move to the esophagus. Then through the esophagus, the food will go inside our stomach. Then after going inside the stomach, it will go to the small intestine. Then into the large intestine. Then moving through the large intestine, it will reach the rectum, and then the food, then it will get digested, and whatever is the waste food, it moves out through the anus. So this is the passage of the food. So for digesting the food, certain secretions are released, certain certain secretions are released. So we have certain glands. So first of all, it is the salivary gland. We have 3 pairs of salivary glands, as you can see in this picture over here. Then the second gland is pancreas. So pancreas is this leaf-like structure present over here is called the pancreas. Then the third gland is liver, and its secretions are stored in a bag-like structure called gallbladder. Then over here near large intestine, you can see another small tube-like structure. It is called the vermiform appendix. It is a vestigial organ. What do we mean by vestigial organ? Any organ which has no function in our body. Now it has no function, but it used to be functional in our ancestors, but it is not functional now. So those organs are called vestigial organs. So vermiform appendix is again a vestigial organ. So now you are aware about the path of the food and the various glands that are present. So both of these together form our digestive tract. Moving ahead. So we take in our food through the mouth. After taking in it, the food gets digested, then the food gets utilized, and the unused part of the food is defecated. The food passes through a continuous canal which begins at the buccal cavity and ends at the anus. So we had seen our alimentary canal. It starts from the buccal cavity and ends in the anus. So the canal can be divided into buccal cavity, then food pipe or esophagus, then stomach, then small intestine, large intestine, rectum, and anus. These parts together form the alimentary canal or digestive tract. The food components gradually get digested as the food passes through or travels through the various compartments. The inner wall of the stomach and the small intestine and the various glands associated with the canal, such as salivary gland, liver, pancreas, they secrete digestive juices. These digestive juices convert complex substances into simpler ones. The digestive tract and associated glands together constitute the digestive system. So now let's check your knowledge. Animal nutrition includes, what are those 3 points? I'm sure you remember them. Animal nutrition includes nutrient requirement, mode of intake of food, and its utilization in the body. Then the alimentary canal begins at dash and ends at dash. So our alimentary canal, yes, it begins at buccal cavity and ends at anus. The breakdown of complex components of food into simpler substances is called, yes, it's a very easy fill in the blank, it is called digestion. So that is all for today's class, students. Thank you so much. Sai Ram.